Yoga Nidra is this practice that, first of all, we need to kind of define Yoga Nidra in a different way, because Yoga Nidra, when we hear about it, we think about the technique. That's what we're kind of trained to think about in the Western culture. You think about this technique of Yoga Nidra, which is this also known as sleep with a slight trace of awareness, like conscious sleep, enlightened sleep. There's so many different ways that it can be described. But in general, when we think about being doing yoga nidra, right, and we have to take the doing out of that, because yoga nidra is actually the practice of non-doing, right? But when we think about this idea of doing yoga nidra in quotation marks, um, we think about the act of lying down in a supine position, of being guided by a teacher to notice our breath. We may start to breathe diaphragmatically. We may start to notice that we're being held by the earth. We may begin to feel that the earth is rising and holding us when we inhale, and that we can allow our body to soften on the exhale. We may be guided to move consciousness throughout the body. We, do a body scan, or to soften or let go at certain parts of the body. Um, and that is really more of a deep relaxation technique that we're being taught. That deep relaxation technique is the preparation for the state of Yoga Nidra. And we can think about the state of Yoga Nidra when we think about what are the other states. So we're in the waking state, there's the dreaming state, there's the deep sleep state, and there is this place called the fourth state, which is Turiya, or this place that's known as the fourth. We can think about that place as the void that is both full and empty at the same time, that there's infinite potential and unbound pure consciousness. That's a space that when we arrive there, it is a place that is said to be peace beyond words, and really a place that cannot be described. And Yoga Nidra, the state of Yoga Nidra, is like the portal just before we move into that space of Turiya.
Mm.
So we're talking about not only the technique of Yoga Nidra, the state of Yoga Nidra, and then we can also talk about Yoga Nidra as a goddess that is written about in the Devi Mahatmya and other sacred texts, that she is the one that has the power of repose. She is the one who has the power of this deep, dreamless sleep, that she took her seat in Vishnu when he was in between this kind of place of creation and recreation in a deep sleep of time called a kalpa, and that even the gods are helpless without this power of repose. And so if we think about the goddess Yoga Nidra as this power, we don't need to think about her as personified, but if we think about the power of nurturing, the power of healing nectar, the power of moonlight, and what moonlight feels like when you feel it and sense it around you. It's this power of just being soft and open and relaxed, and this power of non-doing. So there's lots of things happening in that Yoga Nidra um, practice, but I think the biggest thing that can happen in Yoga Nidra is that we release everything that we are not, and we touch into this place within us that is always at rest.
Mm.
It really brings us to touching the true self more in a way that I feel like no other practice does, because we are in this place of receptivity while we're lying
Yeah.
down.
Wow, that's wonderful. So, how do you feel from your experience this has kind of permeated your day-to-day waking kind of consciousness? Like, is there a kind of a process of unfolding? And is there, I mean, there's probably no expectation for how that manifests in someone's life, but from your experience, how do you feel over time that this has impacted your just everything?
It's a great question, because, a lot of people, when they practice Yoga Nidra, they think of, oh, I'm getting a yoga nap, or I'm going to get some rest, right? Yoga Nidra wakes you up to your life, because it really is about staying awake and aware, that there's some part of our consciousness that can remain awake and aware even while the body is sleeping. So imagine that you are awake and aware through all the states of consciousness, and that this this state of Turiya, this fourth state, is the thing that holds all the other states of consciousness,
Mm.
and that we're somehow connected to just the very entry to that portal, even when we're awake.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? That's a question that I would like people to just contemplate. What does it mean to be awake in all the states of consciousness?
Yeah. It seems to me, kind of going back to our previous topic of dealing with anger and really heightened emotions, that this would be a really useful relationship to have with that layer of ourself, because when we're in those moments, maybe we could get insight rather than just react out of the anger and to go along with the energy of it and lash out in whatever way. But there's a part of us that is aware and observant, and it's probably wanting to give us that insight, and it maybe makes us more susceptible.
Yeah, I think you described it very well. It has the possibility to allow you to be awake to everything.
Yeah.
And I think the more we practice, the more awake we become, the more aware we become.
So, how does this? I'm always interested in how internal practice um, affects our ability to have relationships. As somebody who studies like Mahayana Buddhism, the whole thing is about service and interacting with others. And, I feel like connecting to the Yoga Nidra state and having that sense of underlying hum, I guess is what I'd call it. From your experience, has that changed the way you have relationships and deal with other people's kind of neuroses and their agitations?
I think that it's made me more compassionate, right? Because in the little bit of awakeness that I have and awareness that I have, I see the connection from one person to myself. So
Mm.
it dissolves this idea or this veil that there actually is another, right? It allows me to take that, whatever I'm experiencing from someone in my heart. Doesn't mean that I don't have times of like reacting to someone's, what I'm perceiving as their nonsense or their thing that's happening. But it gives me, when I'm really paying attention, it allows me to pause, not to react, to go back into the inquiry, to be in compassion. And I think that all of my relationships over the years have really benefited from the practice of Yoga Nidra, absolutely, and from the practices that I've done for the last 28 years. And it's also allowed me to draw more clearly those sacred boundaries that we were talking about earlier. Is that sometimes, um, at least for me, there are relationships that are not for me in this lifetime. And I'm very clear about that.